You knew things children weren't supposed to know, not because anyone sat you down and explained them, but because you were paying attention when the adults forgot you were in the room. You heard the arguments through the walls. You saw the expression on your mother's face when she thought no one was looking. You felt the shift in the air when something was wrong before anyone said a word. You became fluent in a language no child should have to learn, the language of adult pain. And somewhere along the way, without anyone asking, without anyone noticing, you stopped being a child. Not because you wanted to, because someone had to.
There is a term for this in developmental psychology, parentification. It happens when a child is placed or places themselves in a role that exceeds what their age and development can reasonably support. When a child becomes the emotional support system for a parent. When a child manages the household because no adult is doing it. When a child learns to read the room, diffuse the tension, keep the peace, hold everyone together. Parentification comes in two forms. Instrumental parentification is when a child takes on practical household tasks, cooking, cleaning, managing younger siblings, handling finances. Emotional parentification is subtler and more damaging. This is when a child becomes the emotional caretaker of a parent, the one the parent confides in, the one who regulates the parent's moods, the one who absorbs adult anxiety and adult grief and processes it quietly so the household can function. Both leave marks, but the emotional version leaves the deepest ones. Because it doesn't just take your childhood, it takes your permission to have needs of your own.
Here is what it looks like from the inside. You are 7 years old and your mother is crying again. And you know without being told that you are supposed to fix this. So you sit beside her. You say the right things. You push down the part of you that is frightened because her feelings are bigger than yours and there is only room for one set of feelings in this house. You are 10 and you are doing the grocery shopping because your father is drinking again and someone has to. You know which brands are cheaper. You know how to stretch $40 across a week. You are 12 and your parents are fighting and your younger sibling is terrified in the next room, so you go to them. You make up a game. You keep them distracted while the walls shake. You do not cry. You are the stable one. You are the one who holds it together. You learn to hold it together so early and so completely that by the time you were an adult, you didn't know how to do anything else.
The psychological cost of growing up too fast is not always visible from the outside. Children who parentify often look like the opposite of damaged. They look competent, mature, responsible beyond their years. Adults praise them. Teachers single them out. They are called old souls. What nobody sees is what that wisdom cost. Every child has a developmental window, a period of time during which they are supposed to be absorbed in play, in imagination, in the completely self-centered work of figuring out who they are. This window is not optional. It is when the nervous system learns how to be in the world, when the brain builds the circuitry for joy, for spontaneity, for trust, for rest. When a child is pulled out of that window prematurely, that developmental work doesn't disappear. It gets deferred. Stored somewhere, unfinished, waiting. And it comes out later, in ways that are hard to trace back to their source.
Adults who grew up too fast often share a specific and recognizable set of patterns. They are extraordinarily capable. They can handle crisis with a calm that unnerves people. They are the person everyone calls when something goes wrong, because they have been that person since they were 8 years old. They know how to carry things. They have been carrying things their entire life. But they cannot rest. Even when there is nothing to carry, they find something. They fill the silence with responsibility. They cannot sit still in peace without feeling that they are forgetting something, failing someone, neglecting some duty that only they can see. They are hyper-vigilant, constantly scanning the environment for signs of trouble. They walk into a room and immediately assess the emotional temperature. Who is upset? Who is about to be upset? What needs to be managed? This was a survival skill in childhood. In adulthood, it becomes exhausting. They cannot turn it off. They have profound difficulty receiving care. When someone tries to take care of them, something in them recoils. It feels wrong. It feels like weakness. They deflect. They minimize. They say they are fine and mean it and don't mean it simultaneously. Because somewhere in childhood, their needs became invisible. Not because anyone said your needs don't matter, but because the needs around them were so large and so loud that there was no space. Their needs learned to be quiet, and quiet needs, practiced long enough, become no needs at all.
There is a specific grief that comes with growing up too fast, and it is a grief that most people who carry it cannot name for years. It is not grief for a person, it is grief for an experience, for the childhood they didn't get to have, for the years spent managing adult emotions instead of having their own, for the version of themselves that might have existed if someone had said, "You don't have to do this. You are a child. This is not your responsibility." Nobody said that, and so they carried it. The grief surfaces in unexpected moments, watching a child being taken care of and feeling something crack open that they cannot explain, being in a moment of genuine safety and not knowing what to do with it, not knowing how to just be, not knowing how to exist without being useful.
Relationships are complicated for people who grew up too fast. They often find themselves in relationships where they are the caretaker, where they give more than they receive, where their partner's needs take precedence and they quietly manage and support and hold everything together. Not because they chose dysfunction, but because this is the only version of love they know. Love as service, love as function, love as being needed. They are attracted to people who need them because being needed is the only context in which they learn to feel safe and valued. When they are useful, they belong. When they are not needed, they don't know what they are. They struggle with people who are too available, too stable, too healthy. It feels unfamiliar. It feels suspicious. They don't know how to receive love that doesn't require them to work for it. And they often mistake the absence of crisis for the absence of connection. A calm relationship can feel empty to someone who grew up in chaos. They don't trust the calm. They wait for the other shoe. Because stability is a foreign language they were never taught.
But here is what is also true about people who grew up too fast. They are some of the most perceptive humans alive. Their capacity to read people, to understand what is unspoken, to feel the emotional undercurrent of a room is extraordinary. It was built in crisis, but it is a genuine gift. They see things other people miss. They understand suffering at a depth that most people never access. They have a compassion that is not theoretical, but earned. They are resilient in a way that is almost impossible to break. They have already survived the hardest thing. They know how to keep going when everything is falling apart because everything was always falling apart and they always kept going. And they have a capacity for love that is deep and fierce and unconditional because they have been loving people through their worst quietly without recognition since they were children. That love is real. Nobody gave it to them. They built it themselves.
The work for people who grew up too fast is not about dismantling what they became. The strength is real, the resilience is real, the empathy is real. None of that needs to go. The work is about adding what was missing, learning that need is not weakness, learning that rest is not failure, learning that they are allowed to have a childhood retroactively in whatever form it takes now, that it is allowed to play, to be silly, to ask for help, to be taken care of. To let someone sit beside them for once, the way they have sat beside everyone else their entire life. You grew up too fast because the situation required it, because someone needed you to, because you were capable and the circumstances were not. None of that was your fault. You were a child who did an extraordinary thing. You held things together that adults couldn't hold. You kept people safe. You did it without being asked and without being thanked and without anyone fully understanding what it cost you. But you are not a child anymore. And the things you had to be then are not the only things you are allowed to be now. You are allowed to put it down. Not forever, not all of it. Just enough to remember that you are a person, not just a function. That you have needs that matter. That somewhere inside the armor is someone who never got to just be. They are still there. They have been waiting a very long time. And it is not too late